Okay, so welcome to Conversations with the Coach. Healing is a return to love. I'm Randy Levin. I'm founder and CEO of Randy Levin Coaching, and I'm a transitional life strategist, author, speaker, and reinvention expert. So when we think about the scope of our lives and we think about legacy, we often think about that being something that we leave behind. And I challenge you to think a little bit differently about legacy as something that you can do, start doing, and start carving out mindfully today. You have a choice to create your own legacy. When we think about the choices we make in our 20s that no longer really stick for us in our 30s or our 40s or our 50s or our 60s or our 70s, because they're not supposed to, because we change and our life around us changes. And so I ask my clients, and I ask always in Conversations with the Coach, what's next? And what's next tonight is a deep dive look into adversity and setback. At one point or another, we all have adversity or setback of some type. It may be an illness, it may be divorce, a loss, a failed marriage, a failed relationship of some kind. It may be something that happens at work, financial stress. The courage to reinvent who you are in the wake of a setback or an illness is a process of rebirth and a road toward healing. So tonight we're kicking off Breast Cancer Survivorship Month with a special conversation, Healing is a Return to Love. It's a quote from author Marianne Williamson from her book, A Return to Love. And joining me is survivorship coach, Gina Costa. And Gina, I'm going to let you tell everyone a little bit about you specifically, and then we're going to just dive right in.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me on, Randy. And I just love listening to what you had to say, because as you were saying it, I was thinking of my own timeline and really kind of hit a couple of points there for me. So I love that, especially in terms of what I do in survivorship. So that's great, and I actually may borrow that a little bit.
Go right ahead. It's well to perfect it. It's out there in the universe, and I'll share.
Because a lot of times we want to leave the past behind, right? But if we look to the past and see how far we come, sometimes that's really a beautiful thing to do.
And I actually love what you said, the word timeline. The word timeline is really significant there too, because when we think about
the
whole scope, it's not just a decade or a year or a microcosm or the thing that happened to you. It's the entire stretch. But go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll move forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that timeline is what we're going to wind up talking about. So I'm Gina Costa Goldfarb. I'm a former caregiver. I lost my mom to ovarian cancer. I was her primary caregiver. I'm also a breast cancer survivor myself, avid fundraiser for all women's cancers over the years, and obviously certified life coach with a niche in working with survivors and caregivers. And so what I do is I help them, cope with the emotional and physical challenges they experience so that they can really regain confidence and control of their lives. Because as I know, as a lot of survivors know, when you get a diagnosis, it's like somebody just cut your legs off. So there's a lot of kind of stepping back and rebuilding, I think, which we'll get into tonight. And, so one of the reasons I really love working with and coaching survivors is, yes, it's about, getting through the emotions and thoughts and feelings of the initial diagnosis. It's getting through your treatments, going through surgeries. You might have chemo, radiation. So it's all about how you cope with that. But it's also about being proactive, taking a proactive role as a patient, seeing what choices and options that you have, because a lot of times we look to our doctors as gods. So, and we don't think we have other choices and options when we do. So in coaching, we can kind of ask the client what options they have, or maybe brainstorm, and then it's just the whole process through. And even when treatment ends, a lot of times, and I know for myself, it's like you fall off of a cliff, and, because your doctors and, all these doctor's appointments and your treatments, they become your little world, even though you have a support of friends outside. And once you don't have them, it's like you lost a part of your family. So it's helping survivors and caregivers cope with that as well.
Yeah.
But again, so the real reason I love working with survivors and caregivers is because, so what happens after that, right? And what has the impact on your life been? And, you know, so it's really, you know, and as you know, in survivorship, we talk a lot about creating a new normal. So what is that new normal going to look like? And, you know, you're a different person now. So it's like, it's a really, it's not a great thing to go through, but it's an amazing time in your life to reassess and see how you want to move forward. So that's, you know, that's my passion.
Right.
You know, because it now really a lot of different aspects in your life are changing. It's not only about the cancer.
Yes. And to that point, so many of the things that you just said as a reinvention coach pop right out to me. Because yes, as devastating and horrible as any illness is, cancer certainly being, you know, one of the top illnesses that we deal with and deal with people with. Those same modalities, that same reaction and what we do in the scope of setback, failure, adversity, anything we want to call that, we all go through it in so many ways in our lives. But the same way that we treat that and look at that and move forward with that is the same application. So whether it be an illness or whether it be the loss of somebody through something else or the loss of a marriage or whatever it be. So I think that there's some really significant pieces here for everybody on every step of their journey. And I think a lot of it is very much an overlap. So to that point, everyone experiences some form of that adversity in their lives. So what are some of the adversities or setbacks that we can then turn into opportunities? What does it look like when we're looking at the flip side? They give us this wonderful rock in iPet coaching that says solution on one side and problem on the other. Okay, so it doesn't say it any better than that. You know, we all have problems. We all have stuff. Okay, but where do we flip it? Where can we look at the other side of that stone?
And just a footnote to that, Randy, I have to tell you that I don't know, we were just talking about Mercury in retrograde or what, but a few weeks back, I took my rock out and I turned it onto solution.
Okay.
And it was amazing how things changed for me. Just a
go.
little note on the rock there and the power of the mind.
I put it up that way. I usually have it that way. I just wanted to make sure, since you said that, I was going right for it.
On the problem side.
So to answer the question, one of the really great ways is really what we're manifesting or what we're really putting out there, even in the worst, cruddiest, most horrible day or most horrible week or most horrible year of your life, being whatever that may be. It's kind of what we put out to the universe, right? Is it the solution?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where's the focus?
Yeah, and what if we looked at our illnesses or our divorce or loss? You know, there's so many losses in life. What if we looked at those not as a block, but as a springboard, right?
Right.
To move us forward, to find what we, you know, to really give and meaning to our lives.
Right. And one of the words I think that we use, which I love, is rebirth. And, you know, when you're hit with diagnoses, when you're hit with, you know, the impact of these types of things, rebirth is probably not the first word you're thinking of, but in a best case scenario, you're coming out of whatever you're going into, you're looking at then having that solution, and that rebirth is part of that solution. You know, what is it you've now learned? What are you stepping into? Where are you reapplying? We talked about timeline. Where are we reapplying things on the timeline of your life so that it's working for the legacy that you want? Gina, can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely. I can.
Okay.
I can, and I could certainly add to that. So, you know, so we're talking about this timeline now, and just for me personally, right? I had so many life events that caused me to change, but really the breast cancer diagnosis was the one that caused a shift in perception in me and really gave me a shock to my system. You know, I always kind of make it analogous to getting hit by a bolt of lightning, but that's when, you know, and I'm sure you'll agree, that's when even after divorce, even after losing my mom and giving birth to my daughter within 72 hours, even, through other life events and losses, that was the one where something just happened to me automatically. I mean, it took me an evolution, but something just told me, you got to get rid of these old beliefs and patterns, and, and who does this stuff belong to? Does it belong to you? Or, and it was, so for me, that was kind of what caused the shift there.
Mm-hmm.
It was different than the other experiences. The other experiences definitely brought me forward, but this is the one that really was the catalyst for change.
Right. It was an opportunity that you saw to rewrite your story a little bit. And you did. What was the biggest thing you did?
It's funny because, when you go through change, there's a lot of things, as you know, that you throw out, right? And a lot of pieces that you pick up and put in. And so one of the things that I got rid of was stress in my life. And one of the tangible things that I got rid of was lists, right?
Oh.
My to-do list, because it had, 25 things on it, but really only 4 had to get done. And it's funny because, so I eliminated and just completely got rid of lists in my life and really eliminated the stress and focused on more being present in my life. But it's funny because recently, after career change and working from home and, launching my 2 businesses and in talking to my coach, so I had ban lists. They were like taboo for me. And so now I'm realizing, well, that's one of the things I want to bring back in. But I don't want to bring a list with 25 things on it. I can still have a list, but a realistic list. So I can have 5 things on it and, prioritize them and be productive in that list. And it's funny how, I had banned that list, but I realized that's really what helps me stay organized.
So do you list in a different way? I mean, do you look at it at night or rewrite it at a certain way or only put 3 things on it, or?
I think it's just, I think also that, so the stress, right? All the stress I had. So I think my mind was constantly spinning. So, it was like every thought and every, impulse I had, something went on the list.
Right.
And now it's like, my mind doesn't operate in that way. I mean, it still fires, don't get me wrong, but, so I don't, it's not like I have to put something on there impulsively. So so maybe at night before I'm preparing for my day the next day, which I used to do when I was working for someone else, I would make a list for what I had to do at work, and I would also make a list for what I had to do at home. So then kind of when I transitioned to after cancer, launching my own business, I got rid of the list because I was like, lists are no good. They're bad for your health. Get rid of the lists. But now it's so I realized there's a positive in lists. You can put things on your list that, are important to you, the priorities. And as you know, as a fellow walker, one of those things on my list is to get out of the house every morning.
And that's all about you. That's something you do for yourself, which is a very important piece of one's list that most people forget.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in looking at all this, what's vulnerability have to do with it? How does that reconnect us to ourselves in some way?
Yeah, it's funny because we were just talking about this at a workshop, and, everybody does it. We're all human beings, and we all have flaws, but we spend so much time putting all these masks on, mask for our career position, a mask as a mom, a mask as a survivor. So all these different
roles, right? These roles.
Yeah. Well, they're all different roles, right? So the thing is, sometimes putting those masks on zaps so much energy from you, because you have to honestly, you have to be someone else, right? So you're trying to be like the well-dressed mom or whatever when you show up to school, and you want to be and look like this or look like that or whatever it is, and it's like all this energy expended for what? I'm me, matter if I have curly hair, if I have straight hair, if I have nice clothes on, if I have tattered clothes on. I mean, really, so it's really, so forget about the outward appearance, but it's about taking all those masks off and just showing up as yourself. And let me tell you something, it takes a whole hell of a lot less energy to show up as yourself than it does to show up, as someone else. And
it does. It does.
That's where I think, the vulnerability and asking for help when you need it, and, just expressing your truth.
Right. And I think that any kind of adversity puts you much closer to your truth if you really want to see it. Now, most people don't necessarily want to see it, but it's there. It's there in living color. I want to, the mics are open right now. I may close them because there is some background noise, but I wanted to, before we do, if there's any questions or anything anybody would like to add, on audio or video or what have you. I think everybody's mic is open. Anybody like to add anything so far? No? Okay. We shall continue on. I am going to close the mic. Somebody has got noise, so I'm going to mute. And if you want to add something, then go ahead and put it in the chat. I will open them again at some point. Okay, but I didn't close yours, Gina, right?
No.
Okay. So when we talk about healing, we talk about the emotional, the physical, the spiritual, the social, and the mental components that go into it, and the energy that we put into all of these. I don't think we stop to think sometimes, and this is true whether we have setback or not, how all these factors are affecting positive, negative energy, how we show up, how we wake up, how we go about our day, the language we use. It affects all of it. So I wanted to take a moment and talk about some of these things. Really kind of starting, I guess, with the mental, that ability to be in the moment and have that clarity and use your intuition. And I think we often forget about that because we're what happened before and we're living tomorrow, and we forget about the today, which is the only thing we really have. So what do you have to say about that, Gina?
Yeah, so the mental is definitely, and these are called influencers, right? They influence our energy. They either increase it or decrease it. So the mental is really multitasking. It's clutter in our minds. It's all the chaos, all the prior, the old lists that I used to have, all that stuff that's jammed up in our minds. And, that obviously results in overwhelm. So I think in order to have I just lost my train of thought. In order to, not be in that feeling of overwhelm and to get more clarity, it's about telling ourselves, which we have to do anyway, right? Is do one task at a time, or what can you do to reduce the clutter? Again, it's about prioritizing, right? So you want to be a little bit more focused, because obviously when you have clutter, you're not focusing, you're not in the moment, and you're not performing your best.
And that's the amazing question right there. What can you do? And simple and easy to hear, but it's a changer, because if we stop in the overwhelm and we stop when we're thinking about yesterday and tomorrow, and we say, okay, I'm here now, I've got half an hour or an hour or this afternoon, what can I do? It shifts it. It shifts your energy right away, and you go more into action because the possibility of what you can do is in front of you versus you're all over. You're on that list of things, looking more to cross it out than to really feel like you're involved in what you're doing. So I think there's a big difference in how we look at it.
Yeah, and it makes total sense, because when we're in overwhelm, we can't do anything. We can't take action. So it's when we stop and pause and take a step back and just do one thing at a time that we get into action.
Exactly. And so then the emotional part of it, that's all that stress and that anger. We love the anger, right? And then emotional intelligence or lack thereof, and how we define success, really. And there's different components of that, because, you can say that anger can work for you or against you, because sometimes it becomes the catalyst to to change or to taking action to doing something. And sometimes it's that thing that drags you down because you're carrying it around all the time. You're so angry that you're ill. You're so angry that you got fired. You're so angry that something didn't work out the way you wanted to. So we carry around this emotional stuff, not always sure how to interpret it or use it in our lives. So in the face of adversity, what would be your advice about emotions?
Yeah, so emotions, I think the emotional influencer for me is, what your needs aren't being met when you're having an emotional challenge. And so is that your own needs? Is that the needs that you want to get from someone else? So I think you have to look at that and again, assess your relationships and, kind of what's going on in your life. And, so you talk about anger. Yes, anger, a lot of people perceive that or are biased because they think it's a bad emotion. It's actually, for me personally, happens to be a great emotion because it forces me into action, as you said. However, on the flip side of that, and you know this so well, Randy, so how long do we want to stay in that anger? I've been at workshops where I've tried to, I've been leading a workshop and all of a sudden we get into a discussion and, the participant will step up and say, well, I appreciate all that you're saying, but you don't understand because, I'm a survivor and I have someone else to take care of me and I have no one to help me. And, they just go on and on like there's no way out. And, so then I'll offer some suggestions like resources. There are so many resources out there. Do you know about American Cancer Society? Do you know about Reach to Recovery? Do you know about Living Beyond Breast Cancer? Do you know about Road to Recovery? And, they come up with excuses for not to, reach out to that. And so that's where the coaching comes in. It's up to the client or up to the individual. It's their choice. They can stay in the anger. And that's totally fine with us as coaches. You know that. Obviously, we care about our clients, but it's their choice. Or you can take action. Same, so that's what we're really talking about. In the face of adversity, loss, change, whatever, you can sit in the corner and rock back and forth. That's fine. If that's your choice, do it. But, on the other hand, would you rather be taking a proactive role in what you're going through?
Right. And go through it. And I think
absolutely.
When we're angry, we don't necessarily go through it. We stay in place. So it's kind of like getting on the treadmill and the treadmill's moving, but it's not going anywhere. So you're in motion, but you're still in the same spot.
Yeah. And you and I know, me, I've expressed, some fears and stuff of my own with you. But wow, when we walk through those fears and face those challenges, we get to the other side. It's like, whoa, I feel like $1 million,
Right.
all the stuff that you avoided. And, all you really had to do was take a risk, take action.
Exactly. So the physical part of this, sleep. I know I need some of that. Nutrition, exercise, pain management, taking care of one's overall health, self-care, the physical component, big. And that tends, I think, as women to be the one that we put at the bottom of the list in general because we're taking care of everybody else. Meeting everybody else's needs. We're those nurturers. So the physical sometimes not so much.
Yeah, and actually, Randy, I think from my core well-being dynamics training, I think physical is the most, I don't want to say popular, but most transformational, call it, influencer, because when we raise our physical or feed our physical, when we get enough sleep, when we put the right things in our body, when we exercise self-care, that gives us a huge boost, which leads to confidence and leads to other emotions. So taking care of your physical is huge. Even if, you work from home and you just kind of fixed yourself up nicely and put some nice clothes on, just taking care of that physical, really does a lot for people. And recently I was teaching a class and coaching one of the students. She had some abandonment issues and she was really in a bad way and she was crying, and all this stuff. And, you know, then she started to talk about some physical things. And I said to myself, I was just doing like a demo for the students. And so I said, you know what, let me go to that physical. Let me see how maybe if I talk to her about the physical a little bit and throw some options out there, maybe we can boost that confidence a little bit. And when we get that step of confidence, then she can work on some other stuff. And I started to talk to her, you know, coach her around it. And it really charged her up. So, you know, I agree with getting to the emotions and all that and getting to the thing behind the thing behind the thing. But clearly, I think she just needed one thing to just lift her up a little bit so she could start to take the other steps.
Right, exactly. And I think that is one of the core pieces of all of this. And we forget that we're important. We forget that we don't operate, we're not a machine, we're a person. And there's so many components to that, certainly. So then we look at the environmental influencers. So climate, certainly we've got a lot of that. We were talking about that earlier, a lot of changes in weather and weather patterns. Comforts of clothing. You know, is your clothing soft? Is it tactile? Do you feel comfortable in it? Do you feel pretty in it? Do you feel that, you know, you could conquer the world in how you're looking and how you're presenting yourself that day? Your surroundings, access to the things that you need. So all these environmental things influence our lives. And then, of course, there's the social, and that's a big one. It's the influence of others. And we listen a lot to what other people say. And social media has not helped that, because we go on Facebook and we feel that, you know, the gospel's being written, everyone's doing what they're doing, and now we know what it is. And if we're not measuring to that, it's somehow something's off. And so we're very big on listening to others, or going to lunch with a friend and, you know, saying, oh, this is what's going on, and the friend wants to fix us. And she's got all these things to say to us. So that influence of society, of people around us, of our support system, the communication, all of that plays in. And I think support system in particular in the face of adversity is probably one of the key pieces as well. Can we speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So the social, and, you know, as you just pointed out, I don't want to forget it, but that connection, you know, and I see it in groups, you know, when all you really have to do is put some information out to a group, and the energy, you know, if people are there for a common reason or a common goal, they just start talking, and the energy in the room, you know, it just takes off. So connection to people, face to face, not on Facebook, not texting, not on the telephone. And social, right? So do we operate better if we do things alone? That's fine. Do we operate better if we're in groups? But then, okay, so those groups, are those the groups of people that we want to be with? Are they, you know, is their energy draining us, or is it, you know, is it healing? Are they in alignment with who we are? Because we all have friends from childhood, or, you know, we're married, and I'm not saying, oh, we should all run out and get divorced, but point being that relationships that we affiliate ourselves with, often our children's parents, you know, those types of things, they may run their course, but we don't necessarily stop and evaluate that. So who we are now has to be reflective of the people around us and needing the proper support system for us, or us for them. Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I mean, you even know as a coach, right? So we just being immersed in coaching, we get involved in this personal evolution, right? And I'm sure that you see as a coach, I saw as a survivor, you know, people see as they're going through divorce, whatever it is. So you're changing, and maybe some of your friends aren't changing. So maybe I want to have this really, you know, juicy conversation with Randy about whatever, life purpose, reinvention, all this stuff. And I don't want to listen to somebody, and they'll still be my friend, I'll still love them, but I really don't want to spend a lot of time into hearing the same story and hearing people talk about other people. That's, you know, maybe that was me 10 years ago, but it doesn't suit me. And Randy, I think that's also a loss. I've actually realized it in some of my relationships very recently.
Yes, it is.
And it's like, you know, so I say for myself, you know, I really want to hang out with this person, but I really don't. And then, so it's like, okay, stop it, Gina. You love them. You know, they're your friend. You love them for who they are. They're who they are. You are who you are, so you can choose to spend, it's like you would tell your kids, whoever, you can have a friend you go to the movies with, you can have a friend you can just hang out with and sleep on the couch and do nothing with. So it is like, in a sense, a little bit of a loss, but it's also an awareness, like an awareness of their energy, your energy, and where you want to be, where you want to spend most of your energy, and what that energy looks like.
Exactly. And I think on some level, certain friends, certain relationships do feel like a loss, and may always at some point. It's almost as if, though, on others, that we may have, if we're changing and we're pivoting, whether, whatever that pivot may be, it could be illness, it could be anything, we may have outgrown who they are or what that relationship was. Like you said, they may be in a place where they like to talk about or sit in a cluster or do certain things that you no longer enjoy doing or want to do. Divorce, big place for that, where, married couples going out together. And so now you're the single person and all your friends are married. And so that changes and shifts. And are you coming with them or aren't you coming with them? What's going on with that? So, there's all those different shifts that we don't necessarily think about within the social influence that definitely affects how we show up in all of this. And then the last piece of these influences, the one that I think is really near and dear our hearts too, is the spiritual. That sense of purpose, that alignment with your values, not just your values that you were raised with, which of course are important, but your values today at 40 or 50 or 60 or 70, because your values change too. At each stage of your life, different things are important to you. There may be a time in your life, usually for women later, this time of life. For me, this chapter is more about me. It's less about my kids. Okay, so my values a little bit, and my priorities may shift a little bit in response to that. If you're in an illness, and you're coming out of an illness, if you're a caregiver, if there's loss coming out of that, your values may shift. They may become more family oriented or more, inward, if you would. So there's so many different variables on this. Also, faith, big one. What we believe in or what we don't. I happen to have several clients who, I don't know, there's a common theme, have something that says the word believe on it. Wear it all the time. It's either on a charm bracelet around a neck, on a bag that they carry, on a piece of stationery that they're scribbling on, or a journal book. The word belief is a big one. It's one of those things we don't want to forget, that we need to have faith and we need to believe, not just in the universe and the bigger picture, but certainly in ourselves.
Yeah, spiritual is huge, and yeah, the faith is a big one for me. And we're all entitled to our beliefs and opinions, but honestly, I don't understand how people who don't have faith get through life. Because I remember in my worst and darkest moments when I was going through anxiety and depression in my 20s. So much to the point where I didn't even know what day it was. Would be at work and look at the calendar, and I didn't even know what day it was. Or when I lost my mom and I had my daughter, and I was physically present, but I wasn't mentally there. But all I kept doing was digging into my faith, my own deep personal faith, and just relying on that. That was my source for strength. And, it doesn't have to be, spiritual can be so many things. Like you said, Randy, it could be, meditating, or just going out for a walk in nature, or, what's your purpose? What do you really enjoy doing? Spirituality, I think, can be defined so differently for everybody. So.
Agree. And where do you think we have a choice with some of these? Because obviously some of these are more uplifting and, automatically put us in a different aura. And some of these can be really draining, depending on how we're using them or not using them. So if we're using anger and staying in anger for a long time, like we said, that could be exceptionally draining. If we really do believe and we're using that as a catalyst for stuff, we're manifesting differently than if we're walking around feeling that we're, a victim in life. So any particular way that people can make those choices a little more simplistically for themselves, because I think that, you know, particularly in adversity, there's a lot on your plate. There's a lot going on. And I think some of these become a little cloudy sometimes for people in terms of where they want to show up. They know they want to be happy. They know they want to get through something. They want to have the change that they need, but they don't necessarily know where to go about getting it.
Yeah, and I think that's where the helping modalities come in, right? So
exactly.
You need therapy. You know, there's a time for therapy. You need pharmacology. There's a time for pharmacology. You need coaching. I mean, let's look at our timelines. I could look at my own timeline and tell you, you know, which one of those modalities that I've used. The awareness, or it could be a support group or whatever floats your boat or works for you. But so I think, you know, having the awareness on these, you know, a lot of these influencers. So having somebody to help us to, you know, create awareness for us so we know what's affecting our energy so that we can make better choices. And I don't know if that was what you were alluding to.
Stay accountable to that as well, because I think that there's just, particularly in the wake of something really going on in your life that's life altering in some way, you know, we tend to maybe be losing sleep, or we tend to, you know, maybe be dragging a little bit more. Or we tend to maybe be looking back to the solution and the problem. We don't know which one we really want to look at depending on day to day. So I think that, you know, there's, like you said, there's people you can reach out to. It may even be people that, you know, may not even be a coach or a therapist or a minister or a rabbi or whatever. It may be your husband, your wife, your best friend, your sister. I mean, there's all different types of support systems. And I think it's really important to keep those in mind when we're going through anything in our worlds that's rocking them a little bit, coming through that.
Yeah. And then what about coming back to home, to ourselves, right? And starting to listen to our voice.
Segue that right into that, because our voice is the one that you got to really listen to, and we sometimes don't hear it. And, you know, it goes back to the vulnerability of really being able to connect to your truth and understand what you're saying now, and allow that in and out. So let out the things that aren't working, let in the things that you most need. And unless we figure out what
and
I
Yep. And I think you'll agree, Randy, and we've spoken about this, you know, what's kind of a common theme for both of our clients, right? Self-love and self-care. And who am I? I think most of our clients don't even think about it. Who am I? No, I'm not a mom. I'm not a, you know, yes, you have all those roles, but who am I? And, you know, the whole self-love and self-care thing, we feel guilty, you know, especially women. We're supposed to be doing things for everybody else. Nobody ever told us to take care of ourselves. And, you know, you just said it. And then when you start to take care of yourself, you feel guilty and, you know, you think it's selfish. So it's like we have to stop all these stories that we're creating in our heads. And so the return to love, the healing is return to love. You know, I've seen it in my own life, and, you know, unless I love myself, unless I come within and, you know, figure out who I am truly at my core, I can't be a benefit to anybody. I mean, you know, I can, and I have, but, you know, so where's my best self in all of this? And clearly, and I'm sure you'll agree, you know, in terms of your own life, me at 51, and I'll reveal that, you know, I feel the best. I feel the best I ever have in my entire life. And I mean, you know, physically, emotionally, whatever, everything as a whole. And I, you know, I really have to attribute that to personal development. Coaching is the icing on the cake, and really coming back to self-love, vulnerability, owning who I am, not being afraid what others think, stopping being a people pleaser, you know. So what does Gina want?
Exactly.
And, you know, I can still be Gina and feed Gina's needs without being a horrible mom or a horrible wife. It's not like, you know, all of a sudden I'm going to grow claws because I'm taking care of myself. It's almost like that's the picture that we create when we say we need to take care of ourselves. And we become this villain, right? Just because we're taking care of ourselves. Well, no, it's so not true.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, in my own pivot, in my own reinvention, one of the key things I had to really ask myself is not only what do I want to be when I grow up, what's this next thing for me, but what would I have done if it had been 10 years before? How would that have shifted for me? Where would I have connected to something that maybe I forgot? Which leads me to what I call our forgotten woman. And there's forgotten men too, but women we forget this piece of us. It's this inner voice, this piece of us that says, yeah, I really want to try that. I really want to do that. I would have done that. That sounds good. But we don't do it. We don't step up into it. It may be something that we started doing, but then we had kids, or we got married, or we started a job, or we quit a job, or whatever it is, like the excuse that got in the way. But there's this inner part of us, this inner forgotten woman that has this voice, and she needs to be heard. And we need to maybe take her to lunch because she's part of who you are. And we tend to forget she's the more playful one. She's the one that takes risks, that tries things, that flirts with life.
Oh my God.
Right? And it's just a big chunk of my own reinvention. And it's a piece I find that we all as women definitely have, but we don't always know what to do with it, or how to connect back to it, or how to make that real for ourselves. And I think in the face of any adversity, it's probably one of the best times to be able to look in, as hard as that is, but look at all of us, not just the roles, not just the hats we wear, not just the things we know on this timeline we're talking about, but the piece we may have left behind a little bit.
Wow.
What is she still saying?
Yeah, that's crazy. I don't know. You have to go to the videotape because you just freaking lit up when you started talking about that, and the passion just started pouring out of you. I actually wrote it down, the forgotten woman.
Forgotten woman.
I could just see how you got lit up. I'm sure everyone else did as well. And I can so relate to that. I got lit up because I saw your passion.
I'm opening the mic.
I got lit up because, for me, so you have the forgotten woman. For me, in terms of survivorship, right, we were always talking about going back to this new normal. Mm-hmm. And for me, I rephrase that, just like your forgotten woman. I have coined it into, I went back to my original normal, which was the person that I was born to be, the real Gina before any, before, and to no one's fault, but the real Gina before, society and parents and teachers and everybody else came in and sprinkled their magic fairy dust on me. And I didn't know any better, but just hi.
We're 7, we're already affected by everything. So,
right. So I'm really not 51, I'm 15 now.
6, you're 6.
But for me, that's what lights me up. Just the way you just freaking lit up like a light bulb.
No, I did, because it's very real to me. It's very real. It's tangible.
And for me, that's, I was never allowed to be myself, as a child and when I was growing up. And then I kind of just conformed to all the rules and just kind of went along with everything. So for me, going back to, my original normal is really juices me up, and, really enjoying that even to this day, because every day is a new beginning to me as well, as scary as it is, and as anxiety provoking. And I think I've shared with you that when I get nervous, I gag, that's really attractive. So, but you know what? There's a beauty in that.
And she has not gagged on this video.
Not once. I woke up this morning and I had some anxiety, and I said to myself, you know what? That's not anxiety. That is excitement, because of all the changes that you're making. So let's get rid of this, anxiety thing, and let's just move on.
And you did. And here you are. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Love it. Anybody want to add anything to this forgotten piece?
I got very excited to see your excitement in talking about the forgotten woman, and how many times I have, for lack of a better term, reinvented myself, going through oftentimes in adversity. When times are good, I think sometimes it's very easy for us to kind of sit back, maybe become a little bit more complacent because we're just enjoying the ride. And I think that when we have those moments of adversity, we have those times that we're going through troubles, it does cause us to sit back and reflect upon what's really happening in our life. And I think that many of us turn to, we use our different coping mechanisms. And for me, spirituality just really shines through. And at that time is when I start to discover, who am I really? And we talked a little bit just about relationships, and we talked, I threw a couple of notes down here. You had talked about divorce and how when people go through divorce, and I'm a divorced woman, and how friends, it changes relationships after. But I often think that we as women, as we're going through evolving, as we're growing and we're changing and we're reinventing ourselves and we're getting risky and we're trying new things, if our partners aren't doing the same thing, I think that can cause the huge rifts in relationships, just as we talked about group dynamics. You know, when you want to surround yourself with like people, with somebody else who is going to grab your hand and take the plunge, somebody else who's going to have the enthusiasm for life that you want to, and growth is stunted, you need to step away from their tree branches and you need to get the sunshine,
I love that.
I think yeah,
I love that.
really
And I'll tell you something. It's an interesting phenomenon that goes on.
And there's been many times in my life.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say that, I think that it was really a great talk when we talk about self-care.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's something, again, that as women sometimes will feel guilty about. But I think that as I've gotten older, I've learned very much to forgive myself for that and to let that feeling of guilt go.
Mm-hmm.
Simply because I realize how much, if I nourish my physical self, my social self, my emotional self, my spiritual self, how much better I can be.
Mm-hmm. Really great. Thank you so much. I love the branches and the light, especially. I'm in front of me right now. It's great. There's a phenomena too that goes on in relationships as we live longer now. We do more longer. Baby boomers certainly changing that forever. The way people age, right? And it's a good thing. But what's coming up is that women are stepping into a big what's next. We're stepping into reinventing ourselves later in life, opening businesses, becoming more involved in things and finding passions that we didn't know we had, or finding that forgotten woman and just, actually bonding with her and making things happen. Whereas men, not as much. They can spend a little bit, but they will tend to sometimes want to retire, or in the more traditional sense, and then look to their wives or whatever and say, okay, well, so now we're going to do, and the wives are like, well, wait a second. No, we're not going to do that because now I'm doing this. So my point being that there's a lot of what's next. We don't always mesh with everyone or with the people we think we're going to mesh with at exactly the same time, because we don't change at exactly the same way at the same time. And so to your point of saying that, sometimes it may be having to accept that and acknowledge that that's just kind of the way the balance is moving in that moment. But if we're doing something that we love and something that we want to embrace, then that's all good, and we can play with the rest of it. We can figure out where the seesaw falls. But there's so many shifts and so many changes in the world the way it is now, and possibilities for us. So even when we deep dive into something that may have set us back, whether, it's something that we had no control over, such as illness, or something that, may be more relationship driven, there's always that what's next. There's always that possibility of what else we can do, or where we can take that piece, and where we can work on ourselves to bring about that healing of whatever it is we need. So we talked about the adversity and the setback, and I think it's important also to think about time alone. And I don't know if we give that the worth that it carries. Time alone is a lovely gift we give back to ourselves, and we don't always do it because we're so plugged in and so connected to everyone everywhere So just how we're set up with our phones and social media and, you know, the world around us, it makes it very hard to daydream, to take time to do some of those self-care things the way we may have, or our mothers may have, where, okay, this is my day to go to the beauty parlor, to do the whatever that I'm going to do. Our parents weren't connected the way we are to everything. So a vacation was a true vacation. Nobody was checking what the rest of the universe was doing or seeing what was going on in their business. And I think that we need to find a way back to that one-on-one time a little bit, that daydream. I think it's very, very healing. Gina, you have anything to say about the concept of one-on-one and daydream? I think the walking, we both are avid walkers. That's
yeah, no, I'm like 10 minutes behind you. I'm still thinking of
still the forgotten woman?
No, not there. Still not there. But what you were just saying about 5 minutes ago, you know, how we evolve as women. And I just kept like thinking you're screaming, like I just kept hearing freedom, freedom, freedom screaming.
It is.
Getting to this place of freedom, right? As women. But yeah, totally carving the time out for ourselves. And you mentioned the walking. So, you know, when I do that, either, you know, I might be listening to some music, or I might just want to be silent, or I have met a couple of friends in the park, you know, and formed a lot of relationships. You know, it's about noticing things, right? So this guy that's running around the park, I start following him because his cologne smells so good. And I can't believe somebody who's running in the park can smell like that. Or, you know, these 3 older men who I just see every day and just give a hug. And, you know, so yeah, that's my time, you know, but it's also a time, so it can be my time alone, but it can also be my time for connection with people, you know, outside of my other relationships. And, you know, so that's just for me too. You know, and just having random conversations with people in the park. I mean, it's so freeing. It's all about freedom. You got me totally like flying on freedom now.
But it's, you know,
like on a total high.
Would you have, if you didn't take that space for yourself, you would never see those older people in the park. You would never have smelled anyone's cologne because you wouldn't be mindful enough to do it if you were busy with everything else and crossing things off a to-do list. And it's to that point that we don't stop in our world to do this. And it's very curing. It's very healing, no matter what we're going through. It's the smallest thing.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, even, you know, and I'm sure you see the same things, even for me to just stop and take a picture of a weeping willow, you know, like I've always loved weeping willows. And, you know, the park that I walk in, I can go to a lot, you know, a nicer park, but I choose to go to this park because I can walk there instead of getting in the car. I don't like to do that. But so even if it's not the nicest or fanciest park, but just taking the beauty, you know, of what we see. And then, you know, walking in with a friend one day, and, you know, not to get, this is not really dirty, but, you know, watching the ducks and just seeing like the ducks go in the water and, you know, put their heads in the water. And, you know, so a friend saying to me, well, that's what a duck butt looks like. I mean, just stupid, silly things, right? That we're just,
you don't notice. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's so cool.
Yep.
So now, you know, every time I see that, I think like duck butt. And, you know, it's funny. It lights me up, you know?
Exactly. So when we look at healing and self-love, what are some of the small steps we can take? Not the big mountains, but the small steps we can take toward better acceptance and understanding how we can accept ourselves and perhaps some of the things that are going on in our particular world at any given time?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that just comes to mind immediately for me is, you know, just to go back to your core, really just go within. Take some time to just be still and be silent, and whatever, if it means going to a beach and just listening to the wave or whatever, you know, just look within and, you know, and find out who you really are at your core. You know, who are you when you peel all the layers off? You know, like we said, before the world got hold of you and created this being, and then you realized you didn't want to be that person. So really look within, go deep, I would say, as, you know, as we go with coaching, really go deep. And, you know, I think that takes courage to do that. And I know you and I enjoy the clients that we have that are willing to do that, and we're there, you know, just to kind of facilitate and guide them, but just to provide this safe environment. And I do it with my own coach, you know, just whatever I need to get out there, I just feel safe to share and, you know, get a change of perception. And, you know, so
exactly.
Just go deep. I mean, that's my thing.
And I think the C word's a big one, and we hadn't really talked about it, but I don't want to wrap up without saying the word courage myself, because I think any adversity, any change we're up against, anything we have to get through involves courage, involves strength. And it's not to be underestimated. You know, we look at these big mountains of goals and things that we want to accomplish, but it's the courage to get through those smaller steps, those little pieces that take us through things that may be good, things that are not as good in our lives, that really need the celebration, right? It's those little pieces of courage that we all bring forward.
Absolutely. And to recognize them and to congratulate ourselves on them. How
Don't forget to do that,
right?
Yes, because we do forget, and then we move on to the next thing, and then we've never really celebrated it, so it doesn't feel like a victory. It just feels like something we did. But all those little pieces that take you through to the other side of whatever's darker, when you're starting to see that light again, there's celebration with each piece, each thing that you do. It's not nothing, it's all something. And
and to also in that sense, right? So you may step back for other reasons, but to step back and pause and really, you know, let that soak in. Look what I did. I had the courage. I had the fear, but I walked through and I did it anyway. Even if it was whatever, putting a toe in the water, whatever it is. But like,
right.
you know,
it's one toe that wasn't in the water before. So, hey.
I mean, you know, so yeah, I love that. You know, just kind of celebrating your small steps.
Exactly. So thank you so much, Gina. I'm going to wrap up with where people can find us. I'm going to start with that a little bit. I can always be found on my website, my little homepage, www.randylevincoaching.com, which is up on the screen right now. It's RANDILEVIN coaching.com. Or Randy@randylevincoaching.com. You can always find where I'm at, what I'm doing, what I'm offering, all those fun things, more conversations. And you can I'd like to offer everybody my free ebook, 9 Actionable Tips for Mastering Your Road to Reinvention, which is also on my website, as is my anthology book, Get Results, which I wrote a chapter called Signs from the Road of Life, about my signature GPS coaching system and all the things that were part of my reinvention that I take forward in my practice. You can find me live on 10/19 at the 201 magazine Women for Women. I'm thrilled to be on their panel discussion, and the topic is Go For It. So go for it and come join me 6 to 9 p.m. on the 19th at the Terrace in Paramus. 10/28 Women Worth Morgan Stanley with Martha Fickinger and Carrie Fitzgerald, Falling Forward into Success. We're back with our free lunch and learn. And I'm doing a launch in 2017 in February of a virtual reinvention summit. And I want to offer anybody who's watching this, even on the recording, to reach out to me at randy@randylevincoaching.com, private message me. There'll be a bonus 30-minute reinvention call that will be added to the package. It's a $297 beta test package, 5-week interactive teachings all around reinvention, which will help you to really solidify that in 2017 for yourself. As always, if I can support you in any way toward pivoting with purpose, please contact me at randy@randylevincoaching.com. Gina, where can we find you?
Wow, you are active and running, and I am going to continue to follow you. I may even meet you at one of those events.
Awesome.
You can find me always on Facebook, facebook.com/Gina Costa Coach. On my website, www.newbeginningswithgina.com. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn, you know, all the social media. And, you know, I'm doing a lot of one-on-one and group coaching and, you know, looking to step more into the hospital settings, because that's really where I really find my best self. And, you know, I just love working with the survivors and caregivers there. So looking to create some new stuff there. So, you know, if anybody needs to reach out to me, I'm always happy to lend an ear and, you know, give a complimentary coaching session. And I'm here.
I love what you do, and thank you for doing what you do, because it's very special and very important.
Yeah, and thank you for lighting me up all the time, Randy. You really do.
You're welcome.
You're an amazing motivator.
We both big motivators. We're on
I'm gonna add you to the
iPad grad, for those who don't know,
influencers.
and we go back and forth on Facebook likes all the time. And
Randy Levin, the 7th influencer.
I love that. I'm gonna coin that.
we can. I'll let you tweet that and quote me.
Oh my God, that's so funny. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. You know it.
Yeah, I
Anybody have
do.
questions? Anybody who's still on? Anything you want to share? Anything that resonated with anybody before we wrap?
Oh, I just want to say thank you so much. I thought this was such a wonderful discussion, and very I guess empowering for people to take a change, to find that woman within that's looking to reinvent themselves. So thank you so much.
Very welcome.
Thanks for being here, Denise. I appreciate
And Gina, thank you for all that you do. You've been such a wonderful asset in coming out and talking with some of our survivor groups, and just in our conversations one-on-one. You really help provoke some thought, and I love your energy.
And we owe each other another conversation or a lunch date. So
yes, we do.
I have it on recording.
Yep. And it's a wrap.
Yes,
Thank you, everyone.